Thanks for joining me for another cup. Doing the strategic work first. It's funny how your mind, when preoccupied with something else, especially if it's a physical activity, like for me, it could be going for a run, a bike ride, or I'm in the pool. When I'm doing those other things, it's amazing how calm my creative mind becomes. It just has a clarity and latches on to different ideas. In fact, most of the time I can connect different things that I've heard and processed over the recent time very easily when I can occupy my body with other things. It kind of calms my mind. In fact, when I try very hard to think of certain creative things, I kind of get my own way. My mind will feel stressed to do it. And in reality, all I have to do is occupy myself with something else. And then suddenly the mind is in a very calm, very powerful state where I can bring things together, think creatively, come up with new ideas. And this time, what I realized was while I was struggling on the bike, my mind was kind of observing, almost this disassociative mindset where I was watching myself and processing my own efforts. And that's where I realized, hey, look, he's just looking straight down at the ground and is able to really push through this difficult time versus looking up ahead at the long term or the medium term of what I was doing. And it's funny how if I didn't ever look up, if I just kept my head down, I'd probably run off the road or hit a pothole or something like that and not really comprehend what I'm heading towards. And yet, as I was working hard, I was better off being in a zone just thinking about what's right in front of me. And boy, does that feel a lot like our week or our month or our quarter in terms of work. So what I was thinking about was the balance of the two. That we have to balance in our work, our long-term planning, and our daily activities, right? Connecting those two sometimes. But it's helpful to forget about the long term and just get down to the nitty-gritty and the nuts and bolts and just getting things done, as long as we are doing that thing in the direction that we want to go. Busyness for busyness' sake doesn't get us anywhere. But as long as we have a balance of the short term and the long term, what's right in front of us and where we're headed, the tactical and the strategic, as you heard in the main message. What I found interesting when I was listening to that podcast and as I processed my work on the bike that day, and I was putting this message together, was how many times we get it reversed. We focus on the daily and that's all, the tactical, and day after day after day, we continue to just do that. And maybe once in a while, maybe on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, sometimes in our work, it's the quarterly basis or the yearly basis where we actually pay credence and dig in on the strategic. So that's why this message was so counterintuitive from this podcast, was do the strategic first, even on a daily basis. And they gave the example of working out, keeping your physical health up. Because that's a strategic that impacts your tomorrow. And again, the two criteria we're measuring here in balance is immediacy, or what we usually call urgency, and impact. So what is really, really urgent may not make a difference in a month. Not one difference. And that's a good question to ask sometimes. Is this important enough or just urgent? The Covey 4 quadrants, right? So I know it's hard to put the strategic first. But what you're doing in that process is valuing your priorities. And I realize that we all work a little differently. You'll hear more in a future message about the 4 tendencies. And this is based on Gretchen Rubin's work about inner and outer expectations. We all respond differently to each. And based on that, we have certain tendencies. And it's almost like the 4 personality characteristics, the 4 personality types that we work with. But you really should value the expectations you have of yourself at least as much, if not more, than the outer expectations the world has on you, or at least have a balance between the two. That's why the idea of doing the strategic first is so impactful, such a game changer. What if, for the next week, you put time in your calendar and not only that, but you executed on it? You actually took, say, the first hour of your workday and did some good, deep work or good strategic work. If you do that 5 days in a row, number one, you're starting to develop a habit that you'll really see flourish. But more than that, think about this. The daily to-dos and the urgent may have no difference to your work in a month. But what happens if you spend the next 4 weeks every day prioritizing your strategic work? Where will that put you? Now, the funny thing about this is we know this. We know this. We know the things that are going to get us ahead. But how many times do we push it off? So what I'm urging you to do is to try this out this week. Every day, set time aside to do the strategic work first and see where you wind up next week. See what an impact that has on your career, on your work, even on your own work mindset. Thanks for joining me for another cup. Doing the strategic work first.